Good morning, everybody. Marty Johnson was a perfectly happy and supremely average American guy. 2 kids, minivan, cozy house in the shadow of the Mall of America. Then a letter arrived telling him he was part of a Nigerian dynasty. We're really flying now, 70 miles an hour over rotting roads, past plantain trees and black market petrol vendors and girls selling toasted cashews neatly packed in soda bottles. We pass churches built by missionaries and billboards demanding our enjoyment of Guinness. Every so often, we encounter police checkpoints manned by sweaty officers gripping machine guns, but we pass them too because an armed guard is riding with us, and the police high-five him and wave us on. There are 5 cars in our convoy, and squished in the raggedy Peugeot up front is Marty Johnson, a 40-year-old mortgage banker from Eagan, Minnesota. Just a few days ago, Marty was closing loan applications and hitting gentle grounders to his daughter's 4th and 5th grade softball team. He was watching his Timberwolves take on the Sacramento Kings. But here he is now, dressed in his light blue shorts and a TGI Friday Chili's Cook-Off 91 t-shirt, deep inside a country he recently had trouble finding on a map. On his way to a place he'd never dreamed he'd visit. For a reason he still can't quite comprehend. When we reach the red dirt road with a fading sign that reads Abo, our convoy lunges left. The drivers begin honking their horns, and soon dozens of people poke their heads out of their concrete homes, elderly men and women, teenagers, children in bare feet. As the horns blare on, the young villagers begin chasing after us, wide-eyed and laughing. Obiala! Obiala! He has come. He might not have found out if it weren't for Laura. So if you've read the description, I'd suggest you read it. Today's going to be a little different. And this is the story that I'm going to read today. And then if I have some time, we'll get to some news. I'll see you in a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, coming to you live from the Lucky Dog studio in a hidden location somewhere in the upper Midwest of the United States of America, it's a brother making his own way but with all the wrong opinions. Welcome to the Morning Night Live with your host, yours truly, PDawg Knight. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Morning Night Live. I'm your host, Marty, also known as PDawgKnight on the internet, and it's Monday, 28th September 2020. If you've read the description, you know that my father passed away yesterday. And this is not the father that I grew up with. This is my natural father. I grew up in Omaha. I was adopted as a young child, and I lived a great life with my family. When I was 40, I discovered my natural parents, my mother when I was 38, and then my father when I was 40, and I got to know both of them. My mother is my natural mother. I distinguish between my parents. My mom and dad are the people I grew up with. My mother and the father are the people who created me. My mother lives in Long Beach, California. My mom still lives in Omaha. My dad passed away about 5 years ago, and my father passed away yesterday. I met him 15 years ago. Had a pretty good relationship with him, although mostly over the phone because he lives in Nigeria, and I've only been there once, and he's only been here to see me once, but we became good friends, and I got to know him pretty well over the phone. And the story that I'm reading today is a story from GQ magazine from, what's the date on this? May 18th, 2005. There was a story written about me in GQ magazine pictures and everything. It's the story of me meeting my father. And so that's what we're reading today, and I'm going to continue. He might not have found out if it weren't for Laura. Marty Johnson would have always wondered, but without his wife, he may never have gone looking for his past. On their first date, he told Laura he'd been adopted. That wasn't a secret. Marty remembered being adopted. He was 4 years old when he was taken in by George and Juanita Johnson of Omaha. They'd given him everything a kid could want in a family. When Laura asked Marty if he knew anything about his biological family, he said he didn't. "Don't you want to know where you came from?" she asked. Sure, he was curious. He wondered if he had any biological brothers or sisters, or why he was so big. By the time he was in 8th grade, Marty towered over George and Juanita. Now he was 6'4" and 275 pounds. He didn't know why his sleepy eyelids looked the way they did, or why his forehead was high or his skin was light brown. He suspected one of his parents might have been white, but it was just a guess. "Maybe I'm Cuban," he said. But he told Laura it really didn't matter to him. He already had a family. Juanita once offered to help him find his biological parents, but he didn't take her up on it. George and Juanita were his parents. Looking around, felt disloyal. "Be happy with what you have," Marty would say to himself. 7 months after that first date, Marty and Laura got married and decided to take a honeymoon in Mexico. And that's when a funny thing happened. To go to Mexico, Marty needed a birth certificate, a document he'd never seen. When he asked Juanita to mail it to him, Marty discovered something he hadn't known. He'd been born in St. Paul, about 10 miles from where he and Laura lived. Marty had no idea how he'd wound up in Nebraska after being born in Minnesota. He wondered if he ever crossed paths with relatives, maybe even his parents, and not known it. Still, he put that thought away. He and Laura were happy. They had 2 children, a daughter Alyssa and a son GT. They bought a small house near the Mall of America. Marty got a job as a mortgage banker. Marty Mortgage, they'd call him. A soft-spoken guy with thick forearms and a goatee. In the end, it was his kids who convinced him. People would say to him, "They're so tall like their dad," and they'd ask Marty if his parents were tall too. He didn't know. It was one thing for him to grow up not knowing his story, but his children deserved to know theirs. So Marty began searching. It wasn't especially rigorous. He signed on a few registries for adopted children, places where he left information, just in case someone tried to find him. Then, one day in February 2001, a letter arrived from an adoption manager at a Catholic Charities in Dubuque, Iowa, from an agency where George and Juanita had adopted Marty almost 4 decades ago. I'm writing to inform you that the adoption office has received an inquiry from your birth mother, the letter read. I'm asking you to consider whether you'd be interested in some form of contact with your birth mother. It was a coincidence. Marty would not have to go looking for his past. His past had come looking for him. The email arrived a couple weeks later. Dear Marty, I would like to talk to you. I've waited a long time and I'm scared. I don't know what to say, and I can talk to anyone, but this is more important than any kind of call I've ever needed or wanted to make. It came from a woman named Kathleen O'Connor Wong, who lived in Long Beach, California. Marty wrote back immediately, giving her his work number, his home number, his cell, and his pager. Don't be scared, he wrote. I have a lot of questions, but don't worry. I'm just happy you found me. Maybe we can meet on Oprah or something. An hour later, Marty's phone rang. She was soft-voiced and pleasant, a little nervous. They tried small talk. Marty told her about Alyssa and GT. She told him about her daughters and 4 grandchildren. She worked for the Census Bureau and volunteered as a peace activist. She was 57 years old. She had said she'd started looking for him after she'd learned her daughter was pregnant with a son. It had made her family take a step she'd dreamed of for taking so long. For the past 37 years, she told Marty, she thought of him every single day. Then she told him about his father. His name was John Ogike. He'd been a visiting graduate student at Iowa State Teachers College in Cedar Falls, Iowa, now the University of Northern Iowa. He was from Nigeria in Western Africa. They met at a gathering in 1963 when Kathleen was home visiting her parents. Back at college in Albuquerque, New Mexico, Kathleen had befriended a number of foreign students, including a Nigerian, and she learned to speak a few fragments of Igbo, the principal language in the southeastern part of the country. That night at a party, she walked up to John Ogike and spoke a little Igbo. John laughed. This tiny brown-haired girl could speak Igbo? He was so impressed. She was drawn to him too. He was in his late 20s, handsome and intelligent. Kathleen was struck by the way he talked about racial inequities in America. She seemed more sophisticated than other students Kathleen knew. He seemed more sophisticated than other students Kathleen knew. Soon, Kathleen started to visit him whenever she came home. They'd go for walks in town. They'd hold hands. In those days, people would look askew at a white woman hanging around with a black man, but Kathleen didn't care. Kathleen didn't care who saw them. Then Kathleen got pregnant. When she told him, John was willing to marry her, but Kathleen wasn't ready to get married. She told her parents about the pregnancy, and they sent her to a Catholic home for unwed mothers in St. Paul, where girls could stay throughout their pregnancy and anonymously give up their babies for adoption. They gave her a pseudonym to match her initials, Kirsten Otto. John appealed to Kathy's mother, but she told him it would be best to cut off all contact with her daughter. So, upon completion of his degree, John Ogike went back to Nigeria. 2 months later, on April 4th, 1964, Kirsten Otto, a.k.a. Kathleen O'Connor, gave birth to John Martin O'Connor. The Martin was for Martin de Porres, a Spanish African saint Kathleen had read about who served the poor in Peru. Marty was baptized in St. Paul, in a church he would drive past thousands of times in his adult life, and when he was just a few days old, Kathleen was allowed to briefly touch him before saying goodbye. And she never saw her son or his father again. Marty was silent on the other end of the phone. He'd rehearsed this moment so many times in his head that he knew it by heart. He was going to say he understood, that he passed no judgment, and that he was just happy to find his mother and have her in his life. But now he was consumed by only one thought. How do I find my father? Kathleen had no idea if John Ogike was still alive. He would be almost 70 by now, old for his part of the world. Shortly after he returned home, Nigeria had collapsed into a brutal civil war, the Biafran War, which tore the country apart. It was possible that John Ogike was long dead. In the days that followed, Marty sent inquiries about his father to Nigerian websites, but all he got back were those fraud emails. I have $10 million in an account, and you only need a $10,000 deposit from you. That the Nigerians were notorious for. Then one day, Marty left a note on the University of Northern Iowa internet message board asking if anyone remembered a visiting student named John Ogike. He'd almost forgotten he posted it because 9 months went by before an email arrived from an Iowa Teachers College graduate named Wanda Nielsen, who was passing time one day and decided to scroll down the message board past all the newer emails, whereupon she came across Marty's message. She paused when she saw it. Wanda Nielsen recalled a handful of Nigerian students who were at the college in the early 60s, including a young man named Boniface Ogike, whom she corresponded with from time to time over the years. She remembered that Boniface had a brother named John. Wanda Nielsen told Marty all of this in her email, and the best part was that she still had Boniface Ogike's address. Marty sent a letter to the address, though he was doubtful he would ever hear back. But 2 months later, he received a handwritten letter in reply from Boniface Ogike, who wished Marty blessings and explained that yes, Marty's father, John Ogike, was alive and well in Nigeria. There was something else in the letter, too. Welcome to the Ogike dynasty. Not long after that, another letter appeared, this one from Teresa, John Ogike's eldest sister, Marty's aunt. You come from a noble and prestigious family, she wrote. Noble and prestigious family? Ogike dynasty? Marty assumed the lines were African figures of speech lost in the translation. Marty also learned that there were a lot of Ogikes living in the United States. More than 20 lived in Southern California, and others lived in New York. He would later discover that he had Nigerian relatives in Minneapolis. As soon as word of Marty's existence bolted back from Nigeria, the stateside relatives lavished him with information about his father. John Ogike was the son of Francis Ogike, an educator who founded a school. Like his father, John Ogike became an esteemed teacher and later went to work at the universities. Many of his siblings had studied in America. He was now retired, they told Marty, and he had married a woman named Juliana and had 6 children: Chibuzo, Gerald, Amara, Abi, Agboma, and Nadozi. These were Marty Johnson's siblings. Marty also found out that his father was the chief of a village called Abo. In fact, in Abo, Chief John Francis Ogike wasn't even known as that. He was called Udeke, an Igbo word that means the renown of the Creator. In his tiny corner of the world, Marty's father was the boss. What this meant didn't truly hit Marty until he traveled to see his sister Abi, who was visiting Ogike relatives in California. Abi was gorgeous and tall and spoke English with a pretty accent. When she saw Marty for the first time, she took one look at him and said, "There is no doubt. You look just like Udeke." Later that day, Abi gave him the news. You understand that where we're from, because of our father's position, you are considered a prince." The word hung there in the air like a smoke ring. "Wait," Marty said. "Say that again?" "You are a prince." In March 2003, the Minneapolis Star-Tribune ran a story with the headline, "Egan Man's a Prince. Really?" Marty's friends began bowing whenever he entered a room. No, just stop that," he'd say. "It's not like that. There was no crown or palace of gold waiting for him in Africa. It was only a traditional title, an honorific." But people who knew Marty began to notice small changes. He became a junkie for news about Africa, cruising CNN and the international section of the newspaper. He started wearing African caftans, presents from his new relatives. This was a man who'd never met a sweatshirt he didn't like, and now he was wearing a caftan to Diversity Day at Alyssa and GT's elementary school. He wore one on his high school reunion in Omaha. He wanted badly to go to Nigeria, but the trip was very expensive, and the Marty mortgage business wasn't exactly going wild. He told people he was trying to go in December for the holidays, and when December came and went, he felt frustrated. What if something happened to his father before he had a chance to meet him? That's when word started getting around among Marty's and Laura's friends. "Let's pass the hat and buy Marty a ticket." Laura started collecting donations from people she didn't know, people who had heard of Marty's story and wanted to contribute. She never told Marty that she was doing any of this. It was around then that this is the writer, his name is Jason. This is around then that I spoke to Laura for the first time. She'd known that I talked to her husband a few months back and told him that if he ever went to Africa to find his father, I'd love to go with him. Now she was calling to tell me that she was going to surprise Marty with a plane ticket to Nigeria, and if I wanted to go, I should make plans to accompany him. On his 40th birthday, Marty walked into a function room at Mount Calvary Lutheran Church and encountered a surprise party full of friends applauding him. Kathleen was there. So was Juanita. Laura stood on a small stage with Alyssa and GT and presented Marty with a round-trip ticket to Lagos, Nigeria. His new family was expecting him, she said. On the first morning, Marty awakes to a voice. "Who are you?" The voice is high, a child's. "How did you get here?" Another voice, also a child. "Are you my uncle?" Marty rustles in the sheets and looks over to see his 2 nephews, O'Neill and Brian, ages 7 and 8, perched across from him. "Where are you from?" O'Neill asked. "Minnesota." "Where is that?" "In the United States." "Did you come on an airplane?" "Yes." Brian looks at Marty. "Do they take the lights where you come from?" "Take the lights?" Later, Marty learns that he was talking about the power outages that are a daily event in Nigeria. "We arrived last night, emerging groggy from our flight into the arrivals gate, teeming with pushy luggage porters, baton-twirling police officers, and money changers flashing thick rolls of naira. As we exited, a pair of taxi drivers began screaming at each other, squaring off like boars, fists raised. Bystanders roared, egging them on. Adolphe, Abi's husband, slapped Marty on the back and howled with laughter. "Welcome to Nigeria," he cried. Our plan is to spend a couple days here in Lagos before heading off to the southeastern part of the country, to Marty's father's village. But first, this afternoon, Marty's sister Amara is hosting a celebration for him at her home, complete with a 5-piece drum and brass band that breaks out into a rowdy welcome song when we arrive. Marty is beset. He meets so many friends and relatives he cannot possibly keep track of all the names. Oops, hang on, sorry. Somehow that scrolled all the way back. Hang on. Damn it. Oh, sorry, gang. I'll start there. Marty's beset. He meets so many friends and relatives that he can't possibly keep track of all the names. They teach him some Igbo. Kedu? How are you? Adema? Everything is fine. Jinenme? What's happening? They all speak English too, though Marty still doesn't always understand what they're saying. So he just smiles, or he pops a bottle cap off a beer with another beer, an old bartender trick that they tried to imitate. He eats too. Chicken, goat's meat, and fufu, a floury mush eaten by hand. His relatives watch him take every bite. They love that he's big and hungry, and they see Marty's appetite, and it's as good as a blood test. Later on, as the party moves out into the driveway, Marty boogies down. He bobs his head and raises his arms and quakes his body down to his leather sandals and white socks. Sweat soaks his shirt. A throng of women surround him, forming a conga line, throwing their arms in the air. When the driveway gate opens, the street kids look inside. Who is this man? He looks like a Oyibo, a white man. Marty dances over to me and yells in my ear. "I just realized something," he says. "We're in Africa." When he was young, Marty Johnson witnessed a car accident. Over time, he began to wonder if his parents had been killed in the wreck. He had nothing to base it on, but he kept the thought in his mind for years, as if it were comforting to think that they were taken from him instead of having given him away. He told me when he was still in Minnesota, getting ready for the trip, and I can't stop thinking about it as we drive to his father's village. Marty's in the car up ahead, and I'm traveling in back in a minivan with a machine gun-toting guard and Marty's brother Nadozi. Nadozi's big and thick-limbed and is wearing a white Charles Woodson Oakland Raiders jersey. "This is finally it," Nadozi tells me. "I've been hearing Martin, Martin, Martin. When I saw him, it was like heaven to me." Several miles later, we turn into the village, and a chase begins. Little kids spill out of their concrete homes. Children dressed in maroon and white uniforms come running from the school that Marty's grandfather founded. Obiala, Obiala. Our convert curls around a grassy field where boys boot half-deflated volleyball, and when we stop, this is Udeke's house, we are told. Red-roofed, painted yellow and green, with a spacious front porch. Marty steps out of the Peugeot, and as he does, a pair of women grab him by the hands and lead him toward the steps. They don't speak to him. They simply tug this wide-bodied stranger toward their home. People in the crowd shriek as he approaches. And then suddenly, there's Udeke. He's at least a half a foot shorter than Marty, but there's no mistaking this is him. He's dressed in a chestnut brown gown and a red cap, and he moves slowly across the front porch. He stops and looks up and down at the light-skinned man standing before him, almost as if he's inspecting him. And then he embraces Marty so hard that the veins in his forearm bulge. Marty grips him back, steps away and looks. The man is smaller, yes, darker, yes, but look at that forehead. It's the same one that he used to stare at in the mirror back home. It's an Ogike forehead. The sleepy eyelids, same. Hands, feet, same. Abi, look, Udeke's wife Juliana says to her daughter. He's a younger version of your daddy. He's cute. And Marty Johnson, who is not known as a crier, cries. And Udeke, who is not known as a weeper, weeps. He weeps so much that he weeps so much that Nadozi, who hates to see his father upset, walks away and hides behind our minivan. It's a hell of a party. Udeke provides the champagne, cognac, and star beer, Nigeria's own brew. He and his his old cook, who'd been retired for years, he's coerced his old cook, who'd been retired for years, to come back. He's even had his entire house repainted. On the porch, Udeke watches Marty's feet, as was done in the Bible for a visitor who arrived from a long journey. Moments later, Udeke steps into his home and returns with his old Remington shotgun, which he blasts into the air in celebration. He goes back into the house and reemerges with a bottle of champagne, but instead of pouring Marty a glass, he shakes it and sprays it all over him like Marty just won the Indy 500. Ha ha, he said. That is an American tradition. Inside the house, Udeke even asked us to sit for a cola nut ceremony. It is a Nigerian tradition to welcome and pay respect to a visitor. Udeke offers a cola nut to Marty. He offers one to me. He offers one to President Bush, telling Marty he must take it to the White House. Okay, Marty says sheepishly. It's a ceremony that will be repeated many times before we leave. Marty will get good at these, learning to pass the nuts and how to properly grasp the bowl in his hands. He'll even start to get used to the cola nut's bitter taste. Each time he takes a wedge in his mouth, he chews on it. Everyone looks to see if he'll spit it out. When he does not, the crowd roars approvingly. Marty meets his aunts and uncles, Teresa, Franca, Aloysius, Hillary, and Boniface, the uncle who first received his letter. He meets the rest of his siblings. Marty was concerned about meeting Chibuso, Udeke's eldest son, with Juliana, worried that Chibuso might feel displaced, but Chibuso greets his new brother with a bear hug. Like all the other Ogike children, Chibuso has been stunned by the news that Udeke had another son, but he's come to accept it. I thank God Udeke wasn't polygamous, Chibuso jokes. It's as if Abo had been expecting Marty Johnson all along. He's just been delayed for a long time. Family and strangers all tell him the same thing. You are home now. You are home. We thank God for you, Martin Ogike, Marty's great uncle Fidelis says to him. God has guided you to this place. The celebration lasts for days. Hardly an hour passes in which a visitor doesn't come to the house to see if it is true that there is an American man here who looks like Udeke. The oldest woman in Abo, no one here is exactly sure of her age, hobbles over on her cane, hunched at a right angle, and stares at him. I didn't realize how many people were waiting to see me, Marty tells me one afternoon as we're eating lunch of plantains and beef. He seems unsure of how to handle the attention. Back in Minnesota, he waited in line at Home Depot like everyone else, but in the village, life moves in accordance to his needs. When Marty naps, everyone in the house naps. His family won't eat until he wants to eat. Nadoze and Aboma, still the babies of the family, won't sit down at the dinner table unless Marty asks them to. When Marty figures this out, he's almost embarrassed. Sit down, eat, he says, watching Nadoze eyeball dinner. Meanwhile, Adeke shows him off every chance he gets. He takes Marty to meet the region's Catholic bishop and the chairman of the local town government. The chairman pops champagne. Later, Nadozi tells me there are rumors throughout the village that our trip is protected by the United States government, and that if even a mosquito were to bite us, flames would bomb the village. At night, back at Udeke's home, Marty's new siblings study him like an alien. Put yourself in Marty's shoes, Abi says to me. 40 years. You don't even know if you're Mexican or Brazilian or Australian. The Ogiki kids are surprised by Marty's mellow demeanor. They can't believe he will sometimes go for 20 minutes without saying anything. He's on the quiet side, Aboma tells me. I would like to know more about him. There are certain things I'd like to ask him, deeper questions. I would like to confide in him. Nodozi, however, thinks Marty's calmness resembles Udeke's. My dad, before he talks on an issue, he thinks, he says. Martin has the same quality. In the mornings, Marty walks through the village red dirt roads, where every detail entrances him. This is my uncle's house. This is my grandfather's school. This is the field where my brothers and sisters played. It's like I grew up here, he says. He is in Africa, and he's starting to see himself differently. Marty never talked about his race much, but his color was always there, especially in Nebraska and Minnesota, where he was often one of the only few black people in school or at work. He says it never bothered him terribly, but here when he sees black policemen and farmers and politicians and pilots, he's surprised by how much this moves him. All my life, he tells me, most of my friends I grew up with, hung out with, were white. It's unique being around so many black people and never thinking twice about what people think about me. Within a few days, Marty replaces his t-shirts with a caftan. He strolls the village with his brother, addressing his relatives by name, even dropping a little Igbo, too. Then there's the chair. At first, Marty doesn't realize that the chairs on Udeke's front porch seem to have a pecking order. Udeke usually sits in the one closest to the door, but lately the father has been ceding it to his son. Now, when Marty wakes up, he plops himself in the honored chair without hesitation. I feel a big responsibility to be out here for people to see me, he says one afternoon as we sit in the front porch drinking sodas out of thick glass bottles. So many people have come by to greet me. A couple nights later, we're at Udeke's house, resting after dinner, when Aboma asks Marty a question. Do you like the governor of California, Arnold Schwarzenegger? Yes, I like the governor, Marty says. You like him? She pauses. Do you get the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air? Yes, Marty says. Will Smith. Martin Lawrence, Obama says. Yes. Oh, I saw him in House Party, Part 2. I like his films. Outside, they can hear Udeke's cook washing pans. Marty and Aboma watch a pack of insects bounce off a light bulb. Martin, Aboma asks, in America, do bugs go to the light? From the time we arrived in the village, Udeke kept talking about what we'd do that coming Saturday. Wait until Saturday, he kept saying, but he never explained why. You'll see, he said. Saturday, you'll understand. When Saturday morning comes, Udeke leads Marty out of the house. He holds Marty's arm as they walk. We're going to your grandmother's village, he says. You can see where those big bones come from. They still haven't talked much one-on-one, but Marty has become aware of facial expressions in his father's that remind him of his own. Udeke's sly grin, the way he playfully arches his eyebrows when he hears something he disagrees with. For Udeke, Marty's arrival has conjured up many memories. He recalls Iowa, its vast ribbons of corn and wheat, road trips to Chicago and the coast of Maine. He remembers the cold, too. Iowa was where John Ogike saw snow for the first time. His classmates teased him about that when he first arrived. You haven't seen white America yet, they said. When Udeke left, he left in a hurry. He did what Kathleen's mother asked him to do. He returned home and served as principal in his father's school, the same one still up the road. But by 1967, the region fell into war. The entire eastern part of the country seceded as an independent state, Biafra. Nigerians turned against Nigerians. The village became a refugee camp. Soldiers marched in the field outside Udeke's school. When the war ended, Udeke moved on to working at universities. He stayed in education until his retirement in 1993. He became chief of the village that year when his father died. But Abo wasn't as busy as it used to be. Nigerian children wanted to live in more exciting places like Lagos or, if they were lucky, the United States. Lately, though, the village has been buzzing like the old days. Marty has enlivened the place. You will be back soon, of course, Udeke says. I hope so, Marty says. This is just the beginning, Udeke says. We leave Abo and enter the adjoining village where Marty's grandmother was from. We round the corner and find 30 villagers, relatives on Udeke's mother's side, gathered around a thatched roof patio. Udeke was right. These are where Marty's big bones come from. The men gathered here are built like linebackers, tall and thick-limbed like Marty. This is your naming ceremony, Udeke tells Marty. According to tradition, he will now give his son his African name. The colon is past. We drink sweet palm wine tapped from a local tree. The men talk mostly in Igbo to one another, but then one of Marty's cousins stands up to recognize him. You are home. You are home. We are sharing everything with you, he says to Marty. We have enough empty land. What is he saying? Marty asks Udeke. If you want to build a house or a factory, you can have land here free, Udeke says. Anything you want. You are entitled. One by one, his relatives step forward to pay their respects. Udeke stands and explains the history of his mother and the village, and how everyone in this village was big, like Martin, and how they all recognized this visitor before them as one of their own. I decided I would give you your name here, Udeke says. Martin Johnson Ogike. Chinenye. The crowd erupts. Chinenye. God gives, Udeke says, translating. God gives. Your name, Udeke says, will never be forgotten in this family. On the morning we are set to leave, Udeke enters Marty's bedroom as he's getting packed and takes a seat on his bed. He looks tired and a little melancholy. 40 years has been compressed into barely a week. I am happy, Udeke says. I just want to think about the future. The past is a fact, but that's all it is right now. A fact. I'm here now, Marty says. Everything's okay. It was a different situation long ago, Udeke says. Can I change it now? No. So I am not concerned about it. It is close as Udeke will come to talking about what happened in Iowa, but Marty isn't looking for an explanation. Like his father, he wants to think only of the future. He went into this trip with some apprehension. Now he's figuring out ways to come back regularly, talking about businesses he could launch here. He could be an importer-exporter, maybe, traveling between Nigeria and the United States. He's seen the carvings in the market that sell for $4 here and $75 back home. He could get a bobcat and plow the roads, help fix the houses. Like any parent, Udeke is dangling a carrot to lure his child back home. He says he will not officially give Marty his title until he returns to Abo with Laura. It feels possible. Marty could make the village part of his life. Laura always said she wanted to retire someplace warm, Marty says, laughing. To the airport, Marty wears a new blue caftan and turns heads on the way to the ticket counter. Abi is there to send him off, as well as Amara's husband Kenneth, and Ndozi. Marty keeps the goodbyes simple. He doesn't want to make Abi cry too much. He doesn't want to think of them as goodbyes. As Udeke says, this is a beginning. Had I never found my family, I would have always wondered, Marty tells me. But now that I have, I'm thinking, God, I should have been looking for them 20 years ago. He laughs as he says this because he has no regrets. Not after this journey. Marty may have been wrong all those years when he thought it didn't matter where he came from. But what a way to be proven wrong. At the security x-ray, a guard looks Marty up and down. You look like a prince, the card says. My father's a chief, Marty says. But you're from America, the guard asks. Chinenye Gogike, the prince of Abo village, picks up his luggage. I know, Marty says. It's a long story. If you're getting here late, this was a story that was written about me in GQ magazine in 2005. When my wife called, so the Prince story came out because after my sister told me that, my wife was talking to friends, and friends knew reporters, and so my wife talked to a reporter, and there was this guy from our local paper who came out to interview me. He writes a column in the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, and he comes out to interview us and says, "Oh, I don't know how much of this column will be this story, but let's just, he came and interviewed us for a while, and it's just going to be, it'll be part." So we're thinking, okay, he's just going to make a little blurb in a column in his column, right? That usually has several different items. And so it was quite a while before the story got to the paper, but it comes out, and my wife's looking through the paper, she's like looking for his column, looking for, just expecting maybe a little blurb that big. And she's going through it looking for this thing, and then she looks and she goes, I see her face literally go like that. And there's this like 1,000-word story with a giant picture of me in my living room wearing a caftan that my aunt bought me, because I wore a caftan for the interview. It's like half a page story, in this Minneapolis Star-Tribune. And we're like, oh, okay, that's crazy. And so we think, oh, well, it was kind of fun to read and whatnot. And but then I get a phone call, and it was someone from the BBC. And I'm like, is this Marty Johnson? Yeah, we've heard about your story. We'd like to interview on BBC Radio. And I'm like, BBC? What? Why? How did you get this story? As they said, well, we heard about it in the Chicago Tribune. And I'm like, oh no, you mean the Minneapolis Star-Tribune? He's like, no, the Chicago Tribune. Well, what the hell is it on the Chicago Tribune? Well, they put it out on the AP Wire. And so I get off that call, and like 2 minutes later, I get another call from, I think it was whatever Canadian public, CBC, is it in Canada, the Canadian Broadcasting, and they want to interview me over the phone. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. And then I get off the phone, and then National Public Radio calls me and says they want to interview me on some show on National Public Radio. And I'm like, so I'm getting all these calls, and we're getting calls from magazines. We even got a call from the National Enquirer, which they called Laura, and she's like, no thank you. So that's how Jason Gay, who now is a sports editor at the Wall Street Journal, that's how he found about the story. And as my wife was talking with him, and he, she said, told him about the surprise party, and that's how he ended up going to Nigeria with me. And then he came with Mark Seliger. I don't know if you're familiar with Mark Seliger, but he's a famous celebrity photographer for GQ and Vanity Fair. He went with us, and I had no idea who he was until I started seeing some of the people he'd taken photographs of. He was taking photographs of, he's done everybody. Seinfeld, Britney Spears. You name any big celebrity, Angelina Jolie, Brad Pitt, and we're like, I'm just like, oh, this guy knows everybody. It's funny because we ended up going to New York because we were on Good Morning America. I think I've played that clip here before. And we went to his studio, and oh my God, he gave us one of his coffee table books of people he'd done photos of. He's just amazing photographer, and but just that, them going with us and doing the whole story, it was a little bit hard. There's obviously a little bit hard for me to read today, but if you want to read it yourself, I'll put a link in the chat here. There's a link to the story from GQ magazine, and it was it's been an amazing journey for me, as I got to learn about my family, and I've got, my father came to visit us about 6 months later. He came to the States because he had to get some. He had been ill, and he came over to the States and got some treatment here, and then came and visited me, and he spent a day at my children's school with my kids, and this was the greatest thing, man. Well, the funny thing is, he came to our house and stayed with us, obviously, and in Igbo tradition, the chief, or my father, if he is in my house, it's also his house, and so it's he usually he can have anything he wants, he can do anything he wants in because it's his house, and but he was very kind about it. He took one spoon back with him to saying, okay, I have my remnant of this house. But when he was at my kids' school, my kids were in, I want to say, 3rd and 5th grade at the time, and he went to the school for was it diversity day? No, he just came. We told the school that, hey, my father's coming here, and they all knew the story, and they didn't tease my daughter and son about being prince and princesses, but they knew about it. And so when they heard that my father was coming to town, they asked if he would come speak in each of their classrooms. And it was pretty interesting because, kids obviously are naturally curious. But in both of their classes, he spent the morning in my daughter's class, and spent the afternoon in my son's class. And particularly my son's class, the teacher, they had a question and answer session. They asked him thousands of questions. I mean, some silly questions, some really good questions. And he just very generously answered every single question every kid had for as long as they wanted. And the teacher in my son's class, especially after it was over, she pulls me aside and she goes, I really thank you for this. I have never seen the kids in this class so attentive and so just so engaged. Every single kid in the class wanted to ask questions and were listening, and she said it was probably the most, it was a really great thing. And so that was kind of cool. It's interesting because my father was an educator. I mean, that's why he was at Iowa State Teachers College. He was getting his master's degree, and for a while he ran the school in the village, and then he went and taught in the university system in Nigeria. And it was but it was just so cool that the kids there were just completely and utterly engaged in what was going on with my father, and so that was really cool. But over the years, I never got a chance to go back to Nigeria, and even now, I'm not going to be able to, even for his funeral. Well, partly because I talked to my sister yesterday. My sister has moved to California. My Abby, we call her Uju. She lives in California, and we're trying to figure out the logistics, even if you can travel to Nigeria right now with the COVID thing going on. And my brother, who still lives in Nigeria, is kind of making all the arrangements. But one of my biggest regrets is that I was never able to go back again. Just flat out couldn't afford it at any given time. We actually, except for just a little over a year ago, Lady Boomer and I put aside a bunch of money and we bought tickets to go. But then after talking to my father, he said it was not a good time to go there. There was some chaos going in parts of Nigeria, and he just didn't think it was safe for us to come there. And so we canceled that trip. And so it's regrettable. I wish I could have gone back. I did speak with my father over the phone. Not a lot, but enough just to get to know him. Whenever we would talk, we'd talk for a very long time. And so it I will miss him. I didn't grow up with him. I really only actually been in the same place as him twice. But like I said, we talked a lot, talked enough to get to know each other. My brothers and sisters I've become very close with, as far as, I mean, just in spirit. I don't talk to them every day, but I talk to them often enough. I went to my youngest brother invited me to his wedding in California. He got all Nigerian. Here's an interesting thing. A lot of Nigerians who live in the States usually travel back to Nigeria for Christmas. They do, and if they're getting married, they will have a wedding in Nigeria, and then they'll have a wedding in the United States. Well, my brother had already had his wedding in Nigeria, but he was having his wedding in the United States. And because my father couldn't be there, my brother invited me to represent my father in my father's absence. And it was just an incredible honor. And then his oldest remaining sister, Abby, who lives there also, was there representing his mother. And so, and if you've never been to a Nigerian wedding or ever seen a Nigerian wedding, think of how most Bollywood movies end with the big, the Indian movies, movies out of India, the Bollywood movies. Think of how those movies end with the big dance scenes and whatever or not. That's what a Nigerian wedding looks like. It is just such a beautiful, festive, colorful thing. And it's funny because for his wedding, we had wardrobe changes during, the wedding. There was one set of clothing everyone wore, and then at the beginning of the reception, the whole bridal party had one other set of clothing they wore, and then the entire bridal party in the middle of the reception has another outfit change, and they all come out together. They announce the bridegroom, and everyone walks out dancing with them, and I had to lead that, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing here, so I'm just kind of dancing on my way out, and they're all doing this like coordinated dance on the way out, and I'm just like, okay, this is insane. But it was so fun. So anyway, all right, we got enough of that. Maybe someday I'll play the Good Morning America clip again. So I really wasn't sure if I was going to get a chance to do any news today. Obviously, the big story yesterday was, I have a name for this. What did I call these? There's a name for what's happening right now. Thank you, Cryptic, for the first super chat of the day. By the way, any super chats or donations we get this week, I'm going. Being the eldest son, there's an obligation in Nigerian culture to provide for the memorial for my father, which right now I'm kind of broke, but I'm gonna use all my donations this week to towards that memorial. Did I ever change this? I don't even think I changed this, did I? Anyway, so that's what I'm going to do. So thank you, Cryptic, with the $5 super chat, who says, the current situation is nigh impossible for travel to Africa. Man, I wish this wasn't the case. Yeah, that is, it's pretty much. It's here. The problem is there are direct flights out of New York City to Nigeria. Challenge, right? but most those are super expensive. Most of the and even a lesser expensive flight to Nigeria, which is usually around $2,000 or so, you have to connect through Amsterdam or London. I think there's Brussels too, that have flights where you have connections, and those are the places that make it impossible to travel, because it's hard to travel to Europe. It's hard to travel anywhere right now, but I got to tell you, Nigeria is really, really a challenge. Did I even change this in this description? I don't even know. Anyway, I have a new term that I've come up with, and it's called, oh my God. Cryptic, that's very generous of you. Who says, I lost my father 3 months ago too. Here's to your father. Thank you, sir. That's amazing. That's amazing. So my new term that I've come up with is the TDB, and there's probably going to be a TDB every day and now until the election, and that's called that's TBD stands for the the Trump Daily Bombshell. Thank you, John Sislowski. The 7059. That's very kind. Condolences to you and your family. A little something for your father. Thank you. I appreciate it. Shoot, where am I at? I lost where I was here. I'm sorry. Hang on a second. Oh, wrong one. God damn it. Anyway, the daily TDB, the Trump Daily Bombshell. The Trump Daily Bombshell. And yesterday, the Trump Daily Bombshell was, of course, the New York Times article that said Trump paid $750 in taxes. Thank you, Purple Pill Perspective, for the $20 with no message. I appreciate it. Have you thought of doing a family live stream? I haven't yet. I kind of don't share my political stuff with my family, although I probably should do that sometime. Very generous of you guys. I appreciate it. Thank you, Willie. Just paid last respects to my aunt and uncle who passed in July. COVID, brother and sister, not husband and wife. And it's a shit year, 2020, man. Head up, be strong, love those still living, and live a good life. That is such a great, that's such a great sentiment. I had the greatest talk with my sister yesterday, and my youngest brother. Talked to both of them yesterday. I got to talk to my older, I'm the oldest, but the oldest of my brothers. I'm going to talk to him today too. And I haven't talked to him for a while. I think he's a little annoyed with me that we don't talk much, but I do plan on talking to him today. And you know what? I look forward to seeing my kids sometime soon. I'll probably see my daughter later this week. Again, love and enjoy those still living and live a good life. That's all you can do. Thank you so much, Willie. So the Trump taxes thing. It's the bombshell of the day, right? He paid $750 in federal taxes in 2016 and 2017, according to the New York Times. of course, this comes out right before the debates, and I think Ranty Monkey this morning. Thanks, Johnny Hellcat. Thank you, Johnny Hellcat, for the 2222, and one of my favorite gifts that alert me to these. Here's to your dad, here's to the memorial, and here's for your family, or here's for family. Thank you, Johnny Hellcat, very much. I appreciate y'all are very generous. I'm employing the 3 to 5 day rules on Trump's taxes. First of all, if you one thing that is abundantly clear is this is specifically timed for the debates. It's been coordinated with the Biden campaign, even though they're going to deny it. Biden already has an ad out today based on that. They've been waiting. They knew this was coming. And as I was listening, I don't remember who I was listening to this morning, but I think it was Ranty Monkey who said, it's perfectly timed for the debates, right? They could spend the first half hour of the debate talking about nothing but Trump's taxes. No other scandals for Biden. And I'll get to that in a second. And they'll spend the whole first 30 minutes of the debate talking about it, and people will tune out after that because the debates are boring, unless you want to see Joe Biden fall on his face 45 minutes into the debate. Thank you, Chicago Mike, with the $20 super chat. Sorry about your loss, Marty. Loved and shared the GQ article. Yeah, it's funny that, and yes, so if you've ever been wondering what the P stands for in PDawgKnight, one of my very good friends that I used to coach football with here when my kids were young, he was kind of a jokester, and he often would just make jokes about, he kept calling me Prince, and I just, you know what, I hadn't even been to Africa yet. But he saw the stories and because it wasn't just in the Star Tribune. It was in the Star Tribune. It was then someone from the local Egan paper interviewed me. Us Weekly, that one of those rags on the grocery store stuff, interviewed us, and it put it in there, and it was just all over the place. And it was on the AP wire, so lots of places picked it up. And so he was always calling me Prince, and I was just like, I was apprehensive about that. Just don't call me Prince. Come on, bitch, stop calling me Prince. And so finally he's like, okay, I get it. It makes you a little uncomfortable being called Prince. So why don't I just start calling you P-Dawg? I'm like, oh my God, Mitch, whatever. So he started calling me P-Dawg for, and then my son would joke and call me P-Dawg. And he's like in 4th grade and he's calling me P-Dawg. And I'm like, oh my God, Mitch. And then from that, then one day he said, he called me Dawg Knight, joking, obviously playing off the name of the band, Dawg Knight. And so Dawg Knight became my moniker as far as it ended up becoming my pen name. Because I thought, okay, I'll be able to work with this. And so I've been Dawg Knight on the internet ever since. It actually means prince. Yes, P-Dawg is literally a fresh prince. Yeah, pretty much. In fact, it's funny because after we went to Nigeria, and then the GQ article came out, and I was on Good Morning America, we actually got a call from Will Smith's manager telling us that Will was looking for projects to do, and they were thinking of doing my story as a movie. And we kind of we were negotiating back and forth with him for a while. And, but it was also kind of, they hadn't decided if they wanted to do it. Will Smith was looking at several projects to do. And this was one of them that they were thinking about doing. And then we got a call from him back saying, well, we appreciate it, but Will's decided to do a different project. And that project was the movie The Pursuit of Happiness. which turned out to be one of Will Smith's better movies. And so he got quite a lot of critical acclaim for that one. And I'm like, well, okay, you can, it's okay. But my wife was very annoyed that they chose that over my story, but that's okay. And then we had another weird producer guy call us after that, and he was thinking about doing it. We're gonna do this story, and they were gonna call it Back to Africa and all this stuff. But it sounded really sketchy, and and then we got this kind of contract that really just if they'd have made the movie, the story wouldn't really have paid me practically anything. I mean, it was some ridiculous lowball number, and we're like, maybe we should get an entertainment lawyer. I don't like the looks of this. And he said, well, it doesn't matter. We're probably going to do the story anyway. We're like, what? And he said, yeah, this is how it works out here. It just could. And I'm like, well, how do you take my story, which obviously has been now national news, and how do you play it off that this is something you thought of? Well, sometimes life imitates art. Like the life has already happened. And so they were talking about that, and then they even had a thing on IMDb, coming in the future about this story called Coming to Africa, but it never turned into anything. So there you go. Anyway, yeah, I'm serious, Selected Boy. That actually happened. So, all right, back to Trump's taxes. As I'm looking at the story, what's funny about it is they never accuse him of doing anything illegal. And I think I got into this the other day because, like the thing where Warren Buffett was saying that he pays less taxes than his secretary. I'm like, no, you didn't. You may have paid a lower rate in the aggregate, but you didn't pay less. And then I'm like, wait, if Trump only paid $750 in taxes, he must have some really good accountants, or that's during 2016 and 2017. Well, you do realize Donald Trump wasn't working in 2016 and 2017, right? I mean, he was running for president, and then he became the president. He donated his salary to the whatever he donates it to in the government. And also, now I don't know what real estate market was, but if he's writing off of depreciation and all these expenses or whatever, okay, it's income tax. It's not what you have tax. If he didn't work those years because he's running for president, probably didn't make that much. Well, maybe he did. I don't know. But I don't care. I'm going 3 to 5 day rule, and we're going to see the debate tomorrow. We're going to see how much that eats up the beginning of the debate, because they already put the debate topics out, right? Do you think for 1 second that Chris Wallace is not going to bring this up? Because I'll tell you what, if he doesn't, you know how much shit he's going to get? Because that's what everyone's talking about. But why are people obsessed with Trump's taxes? That's a good question. Who asked that? That's a good question, Dr. No. So there. So anyway, I'm 3 to 5 day ruling on the tax. Now I'm watching people all over Twitter who everyone's suddenly a tax expert, which I am not. Lord knows I am not. And but they're just, you know what? This is so transparently coordinated. Also, the other big question I have. So somebody in the IRS disclosed Trump's taxes, right? Which is that illegal? The IRS are not allowed to just give that to the reporters. And I knew everyone on the planet had to know that this was going to happen, right? You know that there's some asshole in the IRS who's a TDS, sufferer of TDS, could use themselves some Trumpisol, who, has access to this shit. Who's going to leak it? Did anyone on the planet think that his taxes weren't going to get leaked before this election? Now, does it matter? Does it matter that he paid some 83 million in tax, or 63 million, whatever, in 2005? And it says, they say he didn't pay taxes 10 of those 15 years. Well, how much did he pay in those other years that he paid taxes? And has the IRS ever penalized him? And in fact, there was one point after they did the audit, the IRS owed him $70 million. So how's that work out? So I don't give a shit. His taxes, we'll find out in probably 3 to 5 days. Someone's going to go looking through that and going, I'm okay. And oh my gosh. All right, so let's do this. Let's find out what's happening in the news. I mean, I had so many articles. Well, you know what? I'm going to go through. I do have 5 articles. And the other big bombshell, from yesterday is Ilhan Omar. Ilhan Omar connected cash for ballots voter fraud scheme corrupts elections. They're here. Here are all absentee ballots. Look, my car is full. Money is the king of everything. So apparently a ballot harvester named Liban Mohammed says money is everything. Money is the king in this world. If you got no money, you should not be here, period. You know what I am saying. Money is everything, and a campaign is managed by money. Muhammad, numbers do not lie. Numbers do not lie. You can see my car is full. All these here are absentee ballots. You can't see? Look at these. My car is full. A paid voter. When we sign the voting document, they fill it out is when they give us the money. The minute we sign the ballot for the election, that's when we get paid. Another ballot harvesting triangle, River Plaza Apartments, Horn Towers Senior Community, and 980 Hennepin polling site, all subject to fraud. I know where all those places are. Minneapolis Somali Community Insider. It's an open secret. She will do anything that she can to get elected. She has hundreds of people on the streets doing that. So anyway, this is a Project Veritas video. I'm not going to play this video right now, but I'll read the story. Project Veritas investigators revealed a ballot harvesting scheme here involving Klan and political allies and associates of Representative Ilhan Omar, Democrat of Minnesota, in the first series of reports. It's the first in a series of reports, and it's pretty damning. Numbers don't lie. Numbers don't lie. You can see my car is full. All these absentee ballots, can't you see? Look at these. My car is full. All these are for Jamal Osman. We got 300 today for Jamal Osman only, said Liban Mohammed in a series of Snapchat videos posted July 1st and July 2nd on his own Snapchat profile. This idiot put this on Snapchat. So he can't even claim that he was tricked. He posted this himself. Mohammed said he was collecting the ballots to help his brother win the city's August 11th special election for the vacant Ward 6 city council race, which was held the same day as the primary for Omar's Minnesota 05 congressional seat. Ward 6 is the heart of the city's Somali community and the Omar's political base. James O'Keefe, founder and CEO of Project Veritas, said ballot harvesting is real and has become a big business. Our investigation into this ballot harvesting ring demonstrates clearly how these unscrupulous operators exploit the elderly and immigrant communities and have turned the sacred ballot box into a commodities trading desk. O'Keefe said, "We are showing Americans what's really going on in one of our great cities, but it's not me saying. We have the operators on tape saying it all themselves. Our investigation has found that among 3 locations inside Ward 6, a ballot harvesting triangle where the scheme operates, Riverdale Plaza Apartment, a senior community at Horn Towers, and the Minneapolis Election and Voter Services Office at 980 East Hennepin Avenue, which also functions as a voting location and ballot drop-off site." and they go on and on. You can watch the project here. Let's see if I can link.
Bragging about all the illegal.
I'll tell you what. I'll link the Project Veritas site. You can watch the video there. But you know what? That story will be buried by most of the media because of the messenger. So the messenger, FTD, or not messenger, the media, FTG. Other things. Let's see. Amy Coney Barrett. If Democrats attack her over People of Praise membership, they'll regret it. This is from the U.S. I know this is surprisingly from the USA Today. Here, I'll put this up. You can't fight bigotry with bigotry. Indulging it won't get us a more tolerant America. This is from someone named Melinda Henneberger, who's an opinion columnist. All faiths are at least a bit weird to those outside of them. Imagine telling someone unfamiliar with Catholicism, every chance I get, I eat some bread that I believe is the body of God's only son who was executed in Jerusalem under Tiberius. Totally normal, right? So to all my friends who think that the religious practice of Donald Trump's Supreme Court nominee Amy Coney Barrett, who is a member of a charismatic ecumenical community called the People of Praise, ought to bring out the bulldog in Kamala Harris and other Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee, I say, dear God, no. First, you cannot fight bigotry with bigotry. Religious intolerance is just as wrong as any other kind of othering. Indulging it won't get us a more tolerant America. And senators treating her like a kook that she is not is just what the president is counting on you to do. Unless you want to star in Trump's campaign commercials that he'll say prove the Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden is against God, don't even think about it. Yes, women leaders and the People of Praise were until recently referred to as handmaids, a biblical reference to Mary, the mother of Jesus. In the Gospel of Luke, when the angels tell her, "You will conceive in your womb and bear a son, and you shall name him Jesus," she responds, "Behold, I am the handmaid of the Lord. May it be done to me according to your word." But the group was not the inspiration for Margaret Atwood's dystopian novel, The Handmaid's Tale. What the people in that book are going through is horrible, said Joanna Clark, who runs a People of Praise school in Portland, Oregon, and has known Barrett since college. I've known Amy Coney for more than 20 years. Her intellect and heart is unrivaled. The group does not require a loyalty oath, arrange marriages, or force women to keep having children. It puts a premium on intellectual life and values education for men, women, and children. Its well-regarded schools are attended by many non-members. It does have a view of marriage that I don't share, and you might not either. But that St. Paul certainly did. As the church is subordinate to Christ, says in his letter to the Ephesians, so wives should be subordinate to their husbands in everything. You know what that favorite pro-choice rejoinder, if you don't like abortion, don't have one? If deferring to your husband at home and speaking in tongues and prayer isn't your brand of theological vodka, then don't join the People of Praise or any Pentecostal church in the world. But don't be the kind of hypocrite who embraces only those differences that line up with your own cultural view. That was a Freudian slip. Just as Biden is not coming for your guns, yes he is, or your suburbs, neither is he coming for your religious liberty. But could we please make sure Senator Dianne Feinstein is aware so she doesn't repeat the folly of her 2017 "Dogma lives loudly within you" gift to the Republicans at Amy Barrett's confirmation hearing for her appointment to the Seventh Circuit Courts of Appeal? Oh, so this is a liberal saying, hey, don't do that shit. That's not a good look for us. Oh, she figures it out. Anyway, Amy Coney Barrett is apparently, from all accounts, a brilliant mind. If you want to read the rest of that one, I'll put it in the chat. She's a very brilliant mind, and they're going to try to paint her with that bullshit. A very successful career woman, mother of 7 on the court. And also the other part, I think I find humorous, right? So they're making this big deal of her being a mother, not being able to be a mother because she'd be on the Supreme Court, blah, blah, blah. The Supreme Court works less than the circuit courts. She'll be just fine. She's been juggling this judge mommy thing for years, and her husband is very active, and in fact, extra active in the raising of their children. Shut the fuck up, okay? There's only one reason, and one reason only, that people are opposing her. She's Trump's nominee, and, well, there's two reasons. And then they feel like Mitch McConnell cheated them out of a Supreme Court chip by the one Obama. Oh, well. Constitution overrules. All right, moving on. This is what I found interesting. U.S. plans full withdrawal from Iraqi embassy? Huh. Interesting. Now, how this starts is what really caught my eye. Quote, the Americans aren't just angry. They're really, really, really angry, said one Iraqi official after Secretary of State Mike Pompeo informed the Iraqi government that the U.S. was planning a full withdrawal from the U.S. embassy unless attacks on American personnel and the embassy by pro-Iranian militias ceased. Pompeo gave the ultimatum to Iraqi President Barham Saleh on Saturday night. Iranian-backed militias Hezbollah and Kataib, I think it's how it is, have carried out dozens of attacks on American targets since 2019, while the Iraqi government hasn't lifted a finger to stop them. Iraqi Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi, in power since May, has been promising the U.S. he'll rein in the militias. But the pro-Iran faction in the Iraqi government has put up roadblocks to that effort. Now al-Kadhimi will have no choice but to act. From the Asian Times, ahead of Kadhimi's visit to Washington in August, the U.S. signaled it was unsatisfied with his actions against pro-Iranian armed groups, the Iraqi official said. The U.S. declined to comment on Pompeo's latest call, but a State Department official told AFP that Iran-backed groups launching rockets at our embassy are a danger not only to us, but to the government of Iraq. Fresh in the minds of Iraqi officials and armed groups in the U.S., is the U.S. drone strike January that killed top Iranian General Qasem Soleimani and Abdul Mahdi al-Mohandas. I don't know. I can't say it. The deputy head of state of Iraq sponsored Hashed al-Shabi. Since then, many of the leaders of Iran-backed armed groups have gone into hiding, probably in Iran itself or in Syria. But al-Kadhimi has plenty of problems just trying to keep his job without the added burden of cracking down on groups with which many of his own supporters are sympathetic. Well, okay, pick one, dude. You want our help, or you want to live with those people who, in the end, are going to try to kill you? The U.S. Embassy in Baghdad is the largest, most expensive embassy in the world, and is almost the size of Vatican City. It's been operating with much reduced staff in recent years, and dependents have all been sent home. The State Department said it would likely take 90 days to totally shut down, giving Donald Trump time to reconsider his decision. Anti-American cleric Moqtada El-Sadar called for a security committee to investigate the attacks. The subterfuge has appeared to work. Within minutes, Kadhimi and other top government officials endorsed the recommendation. There's a consensus on condemning these attacks. Condemn Hezbollah and others. Hardliners are isolated and left without political power, an Iraqi official said. So it sounds like the Iraqis are at least listening to the threat and are worried about us leaving, which, fine, pull out. Let's get out. Let's just get out of all there. Let the GCC start taking care of the region. That's why we help to arm them. So anyway, let's see. Moving on. Do we want this? I don't care about this one. Oh, this is humorous. Okay. Well, this will be the last one, and then we'll check for any more breaking news, which I'm sure everything's about Trump's taxes today. This one's interesting just because of the nature of the company. National Labor Relation Board files complaint against socialist-themed vegan meat company that fired union organizers. I thought the socialist types were labor friendly. They found merit that No Evil Foods illegally terminated 2 union organizers and issued a complaint on Wednesday alleging the company violated the law by firing employees because they assisted a union. Oh my. Earlier this year, the vegan meat company, that doesn't sound right, does it? The vegan meat company? No Evil Foods, which sells socialist branded products at 5,500 grocery stores nationwide, including Whole Foods, fired 2 production workers in its Weaverville, North Carolina production plant who led a union drive at the company and circulated a petition asking for hazard pay during the COVID-19 pandemic. The workers say the company told them they were being terminated for violating social distancing and dress code policies. Yes, it's the TYT trick, isn't it? This week, the National Labor Review Board found merit that the company illegally terminated 2 workers. An NLRB spokesperson confirmed to Motherboard, according to a federal complaint issued Wednesday and obtained by Motherboard, the company violated the law by firing workers because they assisted a union and circulated a petition seeking hazard pay for the purposes of mutual aid and protection. So... Oh, I mean, this is a Vice article, but I just find the irony delicious, kind of like a cola nut. Okay, cola nuts are not delicious, but they are a tradition. And there's a lot of caffeine in a cola nut. Like we did those cola nut ceremonies while I was in Nigeria, and you take this little sliver and you chew on it. And it's like chewing a caffeine gum. It just keeps you going during the day. Anyway, I don't care about the. There's why did I start this? Oh, this is funny. An Argentinian politician quits after kissing his partner's breasts in an online legislative session. So this dude, this guy's Juan Emilia Amiri initially claimed he thought he was offline because they were having a Zoom, what was it? Congressional meeting live online. And the dude is out there. Here's the footage. Just there's nothing shown. It's on YouTube. They covered up. But this is hilarious. Hang on a second. Cola nuts or uncola nuts? He's online with this woman. This is a live broadcast of the legislative session.
Escándalo nacional e internacional, como decías, María.
Where is it?
Estaba hablando.
Oh, here they are, right here. Watch. So this is during a legislative session online. He doesn't realize they're online, and apparently his woman had just gotten. I'll turn this down a little bit. Apparently his woman had just gotten her boobs done. And he's talking to her and saying, "Oh, one's lopsided here, one's lopsided there, and oh, then let me kiss it." He's on the legislative session. Oh my gosh! So anyway, he's fired. Actually, he quit. he stepped down after that one. All right, let's check the latest online here. Or excuse me, the latest in news on the Explore tab, something wrap, caviar, don't care. Let's just check the news tab. Trump's taxes are obviously... Bloomberg opinion. Trump's taxes shows he's a national security threat. Yes, they are just foaming at the mouth. CDC director takes aim at White House COVID-19 Task Force advisor. NBC News reports Robert Redfield, director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, was overheard criticizing COVID-19 Task Force advisor Scott Atlas in a phone call while on a commercial flight Friday, according to NBC News. Redfield suggested that Atlas is arming Trump with misleading pandemic information. That's just what we need. Fomenting discord in the committees. Let's see what Monica Alba here has a thread about it. So increasingly concerned about the expanding influence of Dr. Scott Atlas, telling a colleague in an overheard call that everything he says is false and suggesting Atlas is arming President Trump with misleading pandemic information. The call took place on a commercial flight before a takeoff. Redfield acknowledged upon landing that he was speaking about Atlas, a neurologist with no background in infectious diseases or public health. Atlas was brought onto the White House task force in August. Every one of us wore a mask. Redfield told me this pandemic would be over in 8 to 12 weeks. Okay, hang on a second. That's just bullshit. Maybe, maybe not. Sorry, YouTube. We've been playing this mask game in Minnesota for 6 weeks now. And the number of cases are still rising. The number of deaths are decreasing, but the number of cases are still rising. Note the distinction there. Why are the cases rising? Well, because we're testing more people and we're finding more people who had it that aren't getting sick from it. Not necessarily not getting sick, but not being debilitated by the disease. But the idea that it'd be over in 8 to 12 weeks, there are countries where they have been wearing masks everywhere. All over Europe, it's increasing again. There's in Australia, it's increasing. It's weird. Anyway, she continues on what he said. If every one of us wore a mask, Redfield told me, this pandemic would be over in 8 to 12 weeks, before offering a stark warning that contradicts the president's assertion the country is rounding the corner on coronavirus. We're nowhere near the end, Redfield said. Let's see, someone says, this seems convenient. Was it you on the plane with him that overheard that? I don't know. Anyway. Other news happening right now, or let's see, Trump's taxes. That's the Bloomberg article. Of course, it's Bloomberg? Who runs Bloomberg? Bloomberg. That sounds familiar. Anyway, Ivanka Trump appears to have received consulting fees that help reduce the family tax bill, the New York Times reported. Okay, and did she do something illegal is what I'm wondering about. Was it legal or was it illegal? That's the question. That's the only question I want to hear the answer to right now. Sir David Attenborough, we've overrun the planet. He's let's see what this is about. Something, I'm sure it's something. In an exclusive interview with the BBC Breakfast, Sir David Attenborough opens up about his hope for the future, thoughts on world leaders, and why he joined Instagram. Well, because there's a lot of thoughts on Instagram who show you their titties. That's why. Well, not their whole thing, because they can't do that on Instagram, but that's why you're David Attenborough. I know why you're on Instagram, my brother. There's some, you see, just all you got to do is, well, whatever. Election 2020, how Trump and Biden compare on the key issues, from the Wall Street Journal. Oh my God. I might have to read this one later and just laugh at how they present it. But I don't know, maybe the Wall Street Journal will play it down the middle a little more than other outlets, but who knows. Beijing Auto Show, flying cars and face masks. Would you buy a flying car from China right now? Have you ever, do you know what Wish is? Wish is that online you buy stuff and it's usually super cheap, but then you get it and it's really super cheap. Like, the products are cheap too, but they have these really kind of flashy looking commercials, or little, not commercials, but ads. I think of a flying car from China as being something that you would buy on Wish. And when you got it, you wish you hadn't bought it. All right. And Los Angeles Times yesterday apologized for their history of racism. They did go there. Well, that's a good reason that's a good reason for everyone in the entire country to cancel their subscription to the Los Angeles Times. There, they admitted it. Cancel. Bye-bye. All right. I'm going to call it a day, people, because I've got other places to be, unfortunately. Well, fortunately. The fact that I have other places to be is a blessing to me. But for now, I want to say thank you for being here today at the Morning Night Live. If you didn't catch the beginning of the show, start it from the beginning, play it later. Just the story from GQ that GQ magazine wrote about me. I really appreciate Jason's diligence in writing that, and also Mark for the beautiful photography he did. We got CDs of all the photos from that shoot too, which was very kind of Mark, because he usually doesn't do that. He doesn't do it for celebrities, but he did it for me because he was, both the guys that went with us, the guys from GQ and Mark Seller from GQ Vanity Fair, they were almost as moved as I was when we went. It was just an incredible experience, and may my father, John Francis Sogike, rest in peace. Like I said, I didn't get to know him as well as I want to. I didn't get to see him as much as I wanted to. But for the short time that I got to know him and learned about him through a couple visits and a couple visits and a lot of phone calls, he was a very good man, and I appreciate his love for his family, and just my wonderful brothers and sisters. So that's it for today, people. I appreciate those guys, you guys with the super chats. Like I said, all anything I get in super chats this week is going towards the memorial for my father. That is that's kind of as the eldest son, it is my responsibility. And no, I don't plan on moving to Nigeria anytime soon. I've always said from the day I met my brother, the oldest brother who lives in Nigeria, in my opinion, he is still the first son of my father, and anything that goes with whatever happens now, I'm going to depend on him, because unfortunately it's my say, but my say is that my brother is still the significant son in Nigeria. Anyway, that's it for today, people. I gotta go. Thanks for being here. Love you all. My name is PDawgKnight, and I'm out of here. Have a fantastic day. If I can find my outro, there it is. Bye-bye. Hey, this is PDawgKnight, and thank you for watching today on the PDawgKnight channel. If you have an observation or remark you'd like to make about this video or my channel, I absolutely welcome you to write it in the comment section down below. I really look forward to hearing from you. And before you go, if you like what you saw but you're not already subscribed, please make sure you hit the subscribe button and definitely click that bell that pops up afterward so you'll be notified when I post new videos or when we go live. I broadcast my live show, The Morning Night Live, Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 o'clock Central. A special thank you to all supporters of this channel who share our videos on social media and who make donations through the Streamlabs link, which is also in the description down below. Thanks again, and until next time, I'm PDawgKnight, and I'm out of here.